one example that came to mind when you're mentioning this just now is this
Mm.
idea of, but I eat clean. Yes.
Yeah.
You can
Yep.
still eat in a calorie surplus, even though you're eating clean, whatever that translates to for whoever's listening.
You can have the perfect habits in place around exercise and sleep and stress and protein intake and a healthy diet. If you are not in a calorie deficit, then you are not going to lose any weight. So calories are therefore not the only thing that matter.
Yes.
They are the most important thing. A simple way of calculating how many calories you need to consume in order to lose weight is to take your target weight in pounds, multiply that number by 12, and eat within 100 calories either side of that number. So if your goal weight is 150 pounds, 150 multiplied by 12 is 1,800. So aim for 1,700 to 1,900 calories per day. Very simple calculation. Coach, what do you think about that calculation?
I'm going to answer your question with another question. Why the range? I'm sure people are curious.
It's to move away from that all or nothing mindset that we talked about before. Gives you a bit more flexibility. And so instead of having to hit 1,822 calories on the nose, and if you don't, you feel like a failure, you finish in that range. A common question that comes up with the formula target weight in pounds times 12 is, how do I choose a goal weight? Like, do I have to choose a number and then I've got to weigh that? Well, no. You're just going to use that number for the purposes of the calculation. So just pick a number that is less than your current weight and is in the healthy weight range for your height, your gender, your age, etc. You can find that information again on Google. Just type in like healthy weight range tables. Like, just type that into Google and see what you can see. See what you can find. It's only used for the calculation. You do not have to get to that weight. Another couple of things that people ask about is exercise calories. Like some apps, I think MyFitnessPal does, unless you have this setting turned off. If it sees that you've been working out, going for walks, etc., it will add exercise calories to your total for the day. Don't do that. Don't add any exercise calories. The formula assumes you are getting a certain level of activity that we're going to go into later on in this podcast. Let's talk about protein. So, Coach, why is protein so important? Why is it so important to eat more protein while you are losing weight?
Well, protein is a macronutrient that has to do with recovery, muscle building. It keeps you fuller longer. It happens to be the macronutrient that requires the most energy to burn. So there's that component as well. It's going to help with managing hormones that we mentioned earlier as well. There is so many benefits to it that we can go into an entire podcast episode on protein if you really want to. But there's just a countless number of benefits to having protein, from all the things I mentioned: improving recovery, which is also going to include sleep, your performance in the gym, your strength metrics. It's going to be the main macronutrient when it comes to recovery and just seeing that strength improvement.
Well said, Coach. Yeah, I agreed with you there. Yeah. And again, we give a range here for protein. It's a pretty wide range. And the way that we calculate this is we use that target weight number to calculate it. We take that number and we multiply it by 0.7. And then we take it and we multiply it by 1. And that's the range. So somebody who has a goal weight of 150 pounds, 150 multiplied by 0.7 is 105. 150 times 1 is 150. So for somebody whose goal weight is 150 pounds, they should aim for between 105 and 150 grams of protein per day. And so essentially you're going to aim for a decent serving of protein at every meal. Okay.
What do you constitute a decent serving, Coach?
I like to use my palm as a gauge of a decent serving, like 1 to 2 palms worth of protein.
Nice.
Yeah. And people often say, well, that's crazy. How do I eat more protein? I'm tracked and I realize I'm hitting like 35 grams of protein per day. Here's a very simple way of doing it. Open up your tracking that you did today. Copy and paste all the meals into tomorrow. Now you're going to view this as a math problem. You're going to increase the serving size of all of your high protein foods until you hit protein. Then you're going to decrease the serving size of everything else until you hit the calorie range. If all you are left with is basically protein and some 1 or 2 green vegetables, you're not focusing on lean proteins. So sources of food that are high in protein and fairly low in calorie. And then the only other macro to kind of slightly pay attention to is fat, because you do need to make sure that at least 20% of your day's calories do come from fat, just for general health reasons. But 99 out of 100 people will hit that without making any kind of attempt, just through their natural food choices. They'll hit 20%. Now, you don't have to hit 20% exactly. You have to hit at least 20%, again, for general health. So all you have to really focus on day to day when you're tracking calories and protein, because you'll probably hit fat with no effort, most likely. Okay, so now we've talked about how much to eat, how much protein to focus on. And it's going to be really important, again, for moving away from that all or nothing extreme approach, is that we begin to follow the 80-20 guideline. So that means at least 80% of your day's calories should come from minimally processed nutritious foods. Up to 20% can and should come from less nutritious, more processed foods.
What did
I
you
said
say?
should. Sorry, Coach.
What did you just say? Repeat that again for people in the back.
Up to 20% of your day's calories can and probably should come from more processed, less nutritious food. Now, why is that? Because what happens when somebody tries to be perfect with their eating? By the weekend, all they can think about is that food they are not supposed to eat, whether it's the carbs or the sugars or whatever kind of food. And they then spend the entire weekend indulging, overindulging, let's say more specifically, overindulging, undoing their progress for the week. And so by intentionally eating small amounts of that food throughout the week, like having a random cookie on a Tuesday, as I'm going to be doing this evening, going out for pizza for dinner, doing that intentionally, making it part of your plan, normalizes that kind of food, makes it way less likely that you will overeat it when you are around it. And by intentionally eating more of it, you'll consume less overall. Because if that's your pattern, strict during the week, complete free-for-all on the weekend, I would bet that you would be eating less of it overall by being more intentional about eating it during the week.
Yeah. The 80-20 rule is the rule that 80% of your results come from 20% of your inputs. So in this scenario, the results that you would be getting by following this approach would be actually coming from the less nutritious stuff rather than the more nutritious stuff. So like I had mentioned earlier in the introduction, I help people integrate a lifestyle that's sustainable. This is the integration part. Because you know that you can still have it, it makes it less likely that you're going to overindulge in it. And people might be thinking, how is that even possible? And we had spoken earlier about, the weekly time frame on your nutrition scale rather than the daily inputs.
Exactly, Coach. Yeah. So we're moving away from this cheat day mentality. We're going to an approach where you are intentionally eating this kind of food. You're making it part of the plan. There's no good food or bad food. It is just food.